Why China refused to sign a deal with the United States. The real story behind the global standoff. For years, the world watched as the United States and China walked a tightrope, balancing trade, diplomacy, competition, and conflict. But when it came time to negotiate a deal that could reset their relationship, something unexpected happened. China said no. Why would a country with so much to gain, with billions in exports on the line, turn down a deal with the world's biggest economy? To understand the answer, we must go back, not just years, but decades. Because this story isn't just about a trade deal. It's about two very different powers, with two very different visions of the world. The United States emerged from World War II as a superpower, building a global order centered on democracy, capitalism, and open markets. It led the creation of institutions like the IMF and World Bank. And it expected rising nations to play by those rules. Meanwhile, China was rebuilding from a century of humiliation, war, invasion, and revolution. It turned inward, building a communist system with state-owned industries, central planning, and a deep suspicion of Western influence. Then, in the late 20th century, something shifted. China opened its doors. Under Deng Xiaoping, China began economic reforms, allowing limited capitalism under strict political control. It welcomed foreign investment, joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, and rapidly became the factory of the world. The West, especially the United States, believed that by integrating China into the global system, it would eventually become more like them, open, democratic, and capitalist in structure. But that's not what happened. China's economy exploded, but it didn't change its core system. Instead, it built a model where the government directed growth, supported massive companies, and restricted foreign competition. To the United States, this wasn't fair trade, it was economic manipulation. American leaders, both Republican and Democrat, began accusing China of stealing intellectual property, forcing American companies to hand over technology, subsidizing state-run industries to outcompete global players. The US wanted a deal, not just to reduce the trade imbalance, but to force China to change the way it did business. And that's where the real conflict began. Because China wasn't just resisting a deal, it was resisting a transformation of its entire model. From China's point of view, the demands in the US deal were extreme: end state subsidies, open its financial markets without restrictions, allow foreign companies to dominate local sectors. These weren't just economic adjustments. They were political risks. To make those changes would mean surrendering control, and that was unacceptable. Why? Because control is everything to the Chinese Communist Party. The party maintains authority not just through force, but through economic performance. If it loses control of the economy, it risks losing legitimacy in the eyes of the people. So when the US insisted on structural reforms, China pushed back hard. Then came the tariffs. Billions in taxes on Chinese goods. Counter tariffs on American exports. Farmers in the Midwest struggled. Chinese factories slowed. Negotiators met, deals were drafted, headlines teased progress, but time and again, the talks collapsed. And still, China refused to sign. One key reason was mistrust. Chinese officials believed the US would never treat them as equals. They pointed to past deals, sanctions, and interventions as evidence that Washington was not a reliable partner. Even when terms were agreed upon, Beijing hesitated. They saw the American system as unpredictable, where one election could erase a decade of progress. Another reason was national pride. After centuries of foreign domination, modern China is fiercely protective of its sovereignty. To accept what they viewed as unequal terms, dictated by the West, would be seen internally as weakness. President Xi Jinping wasn't just negotiating a trade deal. He was defending a vision of China's rightful place in the world. To sign under pressure would not only damage the party's credibility, it could stir unrest at home. And then there's the strategic view. Many Chinese thinkers believe the US isn't just trying to fix trade. They believe America is trying to contain China's rise, to block its path to global leadership. From technology bans, to restrictions on Chinese companies like Huawei and TikTok, to military alliances in the Indo-Pacific, Beijing sees a pattern of confrontation. So when the US demands sweeping changes under the banner of fairness, China sees a threat. And here's the final truth: China doesn't think it needs the US anymore. While America was trying to rewrite the rules, China was building new partnerships with Africa, Latin America, Europe, and the Middle East. It launched the Belt and Road Initiative, invested in digital currencies, and started building its own version of global leadership. In a world where China trades with dozens of partners, it no longer sees the US as essential. Useful, yes. Powerful, absolutely. But not essential. So when the deal came, when the conditions were laid out, Beijing weighed the cost and decided, no deal. Not like this. That decision marked more than just a failed negotiation. It was a turning point. It signaled the end of an era where America could dictate global terms unchallenged. It proved that China was no longer a developing nation seeking a seat at the table. It was building its own table. And today, the consequences are clear. The US and China are no longer economic partners, they are strategic rivals. Trade has become national security. Technology has become a battleground. And the world is being pulled in two directions, caught between competing visions of order, power, and control. China's refusal to sign a deal wasn't about pride alone. It was about sovereignty, strategy, and the belief that the future won't be shaped by old rules. It was a message to the world: we will not be told who to be, how to grow, or what to accept. Whether that path leads to conflict or coexistence, that remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the story of China and the US isn't over. It's just beginning. And if you found this video insightful, take a second to subscribe to this channel, Next Level Mindset. Here, we dive deep into world affairs, human behavior, and bold truths that help you think beyond headlines. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay sharp, and stay ahead.